Denherder. We're also joined by Matt Woodworth, Woody Game Tag. And we've got with us our co-host, as always, we have PPG Gorilla. Rick, how are you doing this evening, sir? Rick, you're on mute, sir.
Fantastic. How's everybody doing tonight?
Doing good, buddy. You ready for this next coming week?
Yeah, I'm ready. Palm Bay flying.
You're flying, and you got your Kong ready to go. King Kong.
Kong is ready.
All right. We have Phoenix in flight. Nicole, how are you today?
I am doing fantastic.
Good. You have a good weekend?
Sorry.
Did you have a good weekend, Nicole?
I did. I had an amazing weekend. Reason actually got to come home this weekend, so he hadn't been home in a month. It was fantastic, and I just got home from dropping him off at the airport. So amazing weekend.
Good.
Too bad it wasn't flyable.
Well, next time.
No flying.
All right. Now, Trike Flyer, I don't know if he's joining us right now or not. I know he is has been working that Renaissance Festival. Looks like he's there. Hey, Dave, how are you doing, buddy? So Dave is he's working. He's working. He's got cue cards for us. He's flying. Chase. What does that say? Chasing girls. All right.
All right.
Well, we really appreciate money. Wow. How many more cue cards do you
This
have?
should be the last one. Yeah.
All right, good. Dave's here. I know his connection's a little spotty, but we really appreciate him trying to be here as well. I had a great weekend. I did a bunch of flying this weekend despite the cold, but we were actually having some beautiful weather here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Talked to my man, Greg Anthony Harris. He's been busy making videos, as you know, coming back from Israel. Just love his work. He actually got hacked. I don't know if you guys know this. He got hacked on his Facebook account. So I'm sure if you've been a friend of Greg's, he's going to be reaching out to you with a new account here soon. Hey, as always, we want to, I'm going to get my timer out here. Hold on a second.
I already started it.
No, we're starting it now, Woody. Starting it now. Here we go. You ready? 3, 2, 1. I'm going to talk real quick about our sponsors. We have Para Orange Products. They're going to be at the Palm Bay Fly-In, introducing the brand new Practice Reserve. Fly My PPG, Justin and Mike, we've talked about how they are going to go ahead and continue their education, become better paramotor instructors. They're out with Santa up in Utah doing their course up there. I Fly Indiana, Kevin Kemble. Go see Kevin. He is 100% fully committed. He has dropped his other job. He is nothing but a paramotor instructor. Go see Kevin Kemble at Fly Indiana. I Fly Indiana. Wicked Wings logo, Craig Taylor. I can't wait to show everybody my Wicked Wing logo at Palm Bay this coming week. So if you want information on that, go to the Our Paramotor Nation website. One Up Adventure. Kyle and Travis are also going to be at Palm Bay. Stop by and see them. They're going to be in the vendor's booth. They're going to have a hang test station there. A lot of cool things with them. One Up Adventure. Discovered Powered Paragliding. Michael Mixer, as we've talked about him before, he's donated so many things to the show. We've got more giveaways. We're not going to do any tonight, but in 2 weeks when we're back for our anniversary show, we're going to be doing a lot there too. Lone Star Paramotor, of course, they were on last week, I think it was. The tethers that Rick has there are incredible. They sold over a dozen after the show. Rick loves his. I should be getting mine soon here as well. Last but not least, Wisconsin Fly Sports, who donated the helmet for the Resurgence raffle last week. Go see Wisconsin Fly Sports. They're at wisconsinflightsports.com. Time, Woody?
95 seconds for the sponsors, 4 minutes and 5 seconds for the actual show to start.
All right. Which is about 4 times better than last time you were on the show, right?
Yeah, my show, we do 20 seconds.
I do want to say this in the description. Both Shane and Woody's YouTube channels are there. Please make sure you subscribe to them if you haven't already. We're going to be talking about with Shane. Really, the reason that I wanted to get Shane on the show, and actually this is Shane's second go round on the show. He was way back when, probably in the first month when we first started the show. He was on with Tom Morgan. He was a co-guest at the time, and now he's sitting in the hot seat. But Shane put out these videos 2 years ago, Freestyle 101, and I was turned on to them about 2 months ago. I was with my guys flying, Patrick Bryant. We were talking about how I was starting to get interested in maybe doing some freestyle. And Patrick said, Dave, no, wait a minute. He doesn't say Dave. He always says, dude, you need to check out Freestyle 101. I got the videos. So I'm actually going to put a link to the videos in the chat in just a moment here. They're fantastic videos. If you have not seen them, there's something you definitely need to. They're not free. The first one, I believe, is free, and that's on Vimeo. But once you see that, you're probably going to want to get the others. You can rent them. You can buy them. I bought them because I want to keep referring back to them over and over again. So a little bit about Shane. Shane has his private pilot's license. Been flying for how long, Shane?
Well, I guess I started when I was 19, so I won't say what year that was, but it was a long time ago.
Long time ago.
1980s.
Shane,
I'm young.
Shane is a founder of Team Fly Halo. He also helped create the Icarus Trophy. Gosh, is there anything you haven't done? Really? 101 videos. I mean, tell us more. I mean,
Shane, did you fly all the Icarus courses?
No, I flew the first one mostly, and I did it sort of in the early spring when it wasn't a great idea. Had many heart pounding. Well, I won't use the language that the adventurists would use, but yeah, I got scared a few times on it and had to skip certain segments of it just because I was flying it during not the season that we would fly it. But yeah, well, do you want the long bio or the short bio or the paramotor bio?
Whatever you want. Short bio. Short bio. You only have 90 seconds to get through it. Go.
Oh, 90 seconds. Yeah. So I flew helicopters for many years. Once I stopped doing that, I came across paramotoring. My friend Byron introduced me to it. I took a job down in Utah working for someone. We won't get into that. Became an instructor in paramotors. Got hired on as a free flight instructor at a free flight school here in Salt Lake City. And then started a business with Byron and another friend called Team Fly Halo back in 2012. Did lots of training. Yeah, I guess, like you mentioned, the Icarus Trophy, that was just kind of a gig that I got brought on just because I was sort of a local to the West Coast and they wanted to make an adventure course along the West Coast. And some of my Army experience kind of overlapped with being like flight operations director for that event. So I managed it for 3 years. And then, yeah, like you said, the freestyle videos came out. I think it's been 3 years actually, or maybe more. It's been a while. But we filmed them in like 2016. It took me a year to get them together and get them up. And that's pretty much the extent of it. But I had 2 kids starting in 2016 and 2018. And last year I got out of the business officially and started doing part-time stay-at-home dad duties and full-time school. So now I'm doing that.
Awesome. That was good. Thank you, sir.
Oh. 90 seconds, Woody?
Oh,
I have to slow myself down now. I got into very fast speed there because
I don't need 90 seconds.
It could take me 20 minutes to get through the whole opening of the show. So you can
my name is Woody, old man. I'm semi-retired, obsessed with paramotors. Shane's one of my mentors. I sometimes make videos.
So, and I asked, actually, Shane requested Woody to be on the show tonight because this is a great topic and one that I've been looking for and I've really been talking about for weeks since I first reached out to Shane and he said, yeah, I'd love to do the show. As I said, I really, I was like many pilots out there, steady level flying pilot. I had no intention to do anything but fly slow and see the scenery and enjoy everything I can see around me.
That's where we all start.
Yeah, but well, I mean, to that point though, if you watched this past Thursday night, one of the things that my original instructor said on Robert's show was that some people will call him up and say, hey, I saw this YouTuber doing this and this is what I want to do, and he'll turn those people away. It's not bad to have desires to do something that might be out of your comfort zone. When I started looking at Shane's video and watching them and started to do a little bit of turns, a little bit more turns. And I was telling my wife said, you promised me you weren't going to do any acro when you said you were going to do paramotoring. And I said, baby, this is freestyle. This is a whole different thing than acro. So it's gotten to be, well, Woody, you said it in one of your videos, an obsession. You couldn't imagine living if someone said you can't do this kind of stuff. So the basis of tonight's show is a couple things. One is to ask Shane, how do you instruct someone to get into this? Woody, I'm going to ask you later on as far as, how you started progressing. You started off, as you just said, as a level flight pilot, and then you got into this and how you got into that. So Shane, tell us about, I guess, your interactions as you're teaching students and they are now wanting to go into freestyle.
Sure. Yeah. Well, starting out with myself, I actually drove to training with my instructor, like a 10-hour drive. And I was asking him on the way to training if I would get to throw down, if I would get to learn barrel rolls or anything like that. So I was very much of the mindset that I wanted to do that from the start. And I actually, started, we'll call it yanking brake, like 3-4 months after I started flying. And I did my first SIV that summer. I did free flight kind of cross training and started doing like a tiny bit of mountain flying then. And I just kind of went all in for that year. It was my full-time gig. And then, after repeated SIV clinics, I kind of got my technique down, and I kind of considered myself a good, guy that could do barrel rolls after about 2 or 3 years. So that was sort of my progression. I had a lot of scary moments because my coaching for acro was basically, my coaching for acro was basically, okay, do this, go up and try it by myself with no radio and have a scary moment or whatever, then have somebody talk me through a sat, but not on the radio. So it was kind of rough for me. And I know that, in the paramotor world, most people don't live near, all these SIV courses. They're mostly in California, Utah. There's a bunch in those 2 states, but aside from that, they're few and far between, and everybody can't get out for 3 SIV clinics a year. So when people, this this video kind of came about because the most common question I get asked at fly-ins is, how do you do a barrel roll? And the answer to that, Woody, if you've ever been asked, it's like, well, it kind of depends on how much you already know. Like at what level can we talk about this? And there was no 1, 2, 3 step progression to how to get to a barrel roll, or how to safely do wingovers, or how to avoid collapses and wingovers, etc. But as far as what I've seen in progression of acro, I've seen guys start doing it from 3 weeks in. They'll start doing spirals and whatnot, or they'll start doing low flying. Is low flying and foot dragging, I'd say, is kind of the first thing that people kind of get good at. And that's a good measure of how fast you're going to pick it up, I think. And I've seen people do foot drags like in training, towards the end of training, foot drag landings, etc. And then I've seen people that don't want to have anything to do with it ever, and then I've seen people that really want to do it, but they just don't quite have the level head, and their brake inputs are like on-off switches, and they're just very rough. And they have scary moments from the start and don't ever do it again. So it really, as far as when to get into it, when to start progressing into acro, it completely depends on the pilot.
So everybody's different in their skill set, but okay, if you had to say, we talk about how everybody's different. There's no set timeline for anybody, but from step to step, I mean, how long would you like to see some, in the videos that I watched, you start off with a spiral, then you go to wingovers, then to asymmetrical spirals. I think that's the progression. And you always say, don't go from one step to the next step until you've mastered the first step, right? So how long would you want someone to work on step 1 and then step 2 before they progress to the next?
I could see people getting to big asymmetric spirals from the start in the spring, and by the end of the summer probably doing like some pretty hefty asymmetric spirals. And once you can do that, my theory is that once you can do that, you can do anything. Yeah, I think it's more, rather than about skills, it's more about aptitude and how much you do these drills these are my theory. That's why I brought Woody here, to keep me honest, because he'll probably have his a completely different philosophy about how to learn this stuff. But in my mind, if you lived in Florida and could fly a lot, you could easily be making fun of this video in a year and be able to do all of it and be like, it's not a good video. So that's my goal. If you're
I try as much as I can to be an advocate of safety. Even though I still am a beginner, at a year and a half, almost 2 years into this, I'm still a beginner, but I try to talk to safety as much as I can and with everybody. And so my thought was, as far as freestyle or acro or whatever you want to call it, is that you really need to go to someone and have someone in your ear talking you through this. Don't read a book about it. Don't watch a video, for goodness sake. But yet here I am finding myself watching Freestyle 101 going, okay, I could do a little pull here. I could do a little pull here. And okay, now that wasn't so bad. I can do I can hold outside brake a little bit too. Or in the case of a wing over, pull, pop, look, lean, pull, pop. I'm like, this is getting good. The scariest part for me is losing the fear. Like, I feel like last night I was going pretty heavy on some wing overs and I'm facing straight down. I'm going, I'm not even scared of this anymore. The fear is gone. And that makes me nervous. Like, I should be more respectful of what I'm doing right now instead of pulling these hard wing overs. Do you ever get anybody that just goes full out, blown out, and scaring you as you're watching them?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not usually somebody under instruction. I think I've only had maybe one person over the years that like just completely was crazy, wouldn't listen, and it's like, I'm not going to teach you style. But yeah, as far as, well, the point that you made that, you were thinking it would be stupid to try and learn this from a video. It's true. It's exactly what I first thought of doing these videos like in 2014. And I was like, no, you can't learn from a video. You have to go to an SIV clinic. But, you keep seeing people round spiraling into the ground or just getting really bad advice online and trying it anyway, posting their videos and just having these, events happen. And it's like, okay, they're either going to get terrible advice. They're never going to go travel and do an SIV clinic. So what I kind of think of as Freestyle 101, it's like a set of drills that you can do in increments that'll help you teach yourself, how to do these things. And yeah, I didn't know the word. I think I learned this word like a year ago, but heuristic. So a heuristic is basically something that isn't necessarily true or logical, but it's something that helps you get to a goal. It's like, okay, it's a 2-stage brake pull. It's not really a 2-stage brake pull. It's actually, just an incremental brake pull. But the easy way to start learning it, because I can't give you like really detailed feedback in flight, even on the radio, is it's 1, 2, 1, 2, and that'll get you there. And then you'll start to fine tune it and go, okay, yes, I'm tuning into the subtlety of what this 2-stage brake pull, and it's actually like that,
And a good portion of people are not going to go to SIV and they're going to learn it on their own. And what you're doing is just trying to help and guide them in the right direction.
Yeah. The theory is to give, a set of good practices and some drills that'll help guide you to it at your own pace. And, this could take 5 years for somebody to learn. They might never learn it, or they could whip through. I've seen people whip through it in like 2 weeks that already had, some of the basics down, and they're like, oh, dude, there was like one good tip in there. I paid for that. Gosh, I could have just Facebook messaged you. It's like,
Really?
Sorry.
There's a parallel with teaching safe sex in high school here, right? Like, you kind of don't want them to do it, but they're gonna, so teach them properly.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Can't tell them teach them abstinence. It's not going to work.
So
Yeah.
your numbers were so much faster than I expected them to be in terms of how long you should be flying. And, if you start in the spring, you could be, I think I started fooling around with wing overs or even spirals as about 100-hour pilot. And I went into my first SIV with about 140 hours. And my goal in that SIV was to get my wing overs bigger. They weren't really all that big yet. Shane said I could go medium this way. He's like, yeah, what are you going medium? All right, jerk. So, and you were talking about 3 weeks in doing that stuff. But there's a difference here. I think about sometimes.
Yeah.
I'll
Sorry.
just lay this out real quick.
Sure.
Shane and other instructors get to see this experience with the breadth of their students. They have this whole community, and that gives them an experience that I don't get, right? I look at toilet paper. I look at paramotor progression through like a toilet paper roll, right? I have no peripheral vision. I just have my own tunnel vision of my personal experience, not that of hundreds of students and how they come along and what different people are like.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, you were kind of a strange case to me because you seemed apprehensive and maybe this all sounds ridiculous in retrospect, but it seemed like a little bit of a slow starter. And it's like now you're like way past me in acro, so I'm like, I guess I was wrong about that. But you know, I
No,
think
I'm
you may
still
have just been
apprehensive and a slow learner. I just try really hard.
not a slow learner, just like
We
slow
watched-
to warm up.
We watched Woody's videos from the beginning, and he was terrified. He was scared to death.
Yeah, that hasn't changed. That's about
get
the same.
Yeah, and you know I've had maybe over the years like 5 students that were doing foot drags in the sand, mile-long foot drags in the sand during their 10-day training, and those guys are the guys that they just get after it. They're generally like very athletic in every single thing they do. They're just athletes. I
Right.
am not like that. I just had a lot of, I guess, aviation experience, so that's why I took to it. I was doing long foot drags in my training, and then I always flew with my instructor for the first 3-4 months. That was Dell. Shout out. Thanks for that. And then I got another instructor, and went from 3 or 4 mentors in my first year. Well, I had, by the end of that first year, I had 3 instructors at that time in 3 different disciplines, 2 SIV clinics, and then the next year, I was throwing sats comfortably my first summer, and I learned in January of that year. People just start, or people just progress through it quicker. Or at different levels, I should say, and it's not bad either way.
There's a couple questions in the chat. Some of them I'm gonna try to come back to. I try and want to stay where we're at as much as possible in the conversation here. And if some of the questions come in and maybe they'll be better down the road, we'll get back to them. But here's a question from Dustin. And Dustin, I'm gonna try to pronounce your last name correctly. Tymire. The question is, for someone who may be moving into freestyle, they may also be nearing a glider upgrade. Is it better to stick with the beginner wing when getting into maneuvers? Any general thoughts on wings?
Is that for me or for everybody?
For you, and then we'll let Woody, and if anybody else wants to chime in, and I might have a thought on it too.
Yeah, I would say you'll get a huge benefit out of moving into freestyle on a beginner glider that doesn't turn as quickly, has more surface area overhead in case things do go wrong, and something that doesn't roll as quickly. It's going to be harder. You're going to have to weight shift harder. David, you and I were talking about this last week. You're just going to have to weight shift more effectively to make it happen. Your brake pulls are going to have to be more effective to make it happen. So I'd say within reason, if it's a good beginner glider, start out on that and move up, after you've completely mastered that and are bored with it. That's when I would say to do that.
Yeah, I would say that you'll grow into a better pilot if you learn on a beginner wing, as an ENA or ENB class wing. If you go straight to a free ride, it really will make it easier. People say you can't buy talent, but you kind of can. You go to a free ride, you'll go upside down right away. You'll have no trouble doing it. But it might be more than you asked for. You pull that brake 6 inches and you can get inverted. You really will. And then you have to figure out how to get out of that problem. I remember when I first started doing wing overs, I didn't have any trouble growing them. They would just get bigger and bigger and bigger until I had more than I wanted. And that was on a Speedster 2, which is probably the most mild, the most docile of that class of wings, like the Speedster 2 Colorado Nucleon. I would put that as the most docile of them. And it just got bigger and bigger. And my challenge was figuring out how to slow them down without just spiraling out of the wing over like a noob. And so anyway, moving to a more advanced wing will help you go bigger, but you'll find yourself with more energy than you know what to do with. And also you won't have to learn the subtleties of keeping the outside brake pressurized and keeping that wing from collapsing.
I like that. I have my air design, which is a beginner wing for my Fresh Breeze, which with my $4,000 homemade trike fly.
The Ramaflex?
No.
Which air design?
It's the air design.
Easy?
Yes, easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So obviously with that fly pod, and Shane and I talked about this, I can't do any weight shift with it. And I can do wing overs and I can do spirals, but the only reason I'm not pushing my limits is because I don't have a reserve on that unit. First of all, it's very difficult to even figure out how to get a reserve onto this thing the way it's built. but I think we have it figured out, and I've been working with one of my instructors, and I think we're going to get that solved. But with my my Maverick, I've got my Spider 3, and we just tied in the other day the 2D steering to that, and I could see a huge difference with the 2D steering and the wing overs. But to your point, I don't want to go upgrading wings right away. I'd rather get really great with those. As Tucker said in one of his videos, use it until you've mastered it. So I like those answers. Nicole, Rick, Dave, any thoughts on that as well?
I've said it a lot. If you can do it on an A glider, then you really know how to do it. If you have to go up to another wing just to be able to do the maneuver, then you don't understand how to actually do the maneuver.
Yeah,
You're a few steps ahead of me, Dave, because I just started foot launching. So, like another 6 months, maybe I'll be in the wing overs, but I'll check back in there.
Dave, trike flyer?
Oh, I was just going to say, I absolutely agree. I'm actually just sitting here listening to you going nose down, and I've been nose down about 2 or 3 times, and it still scares me to death. So anyway.
Woody,
I wanted to ask Woody.
Yeah.
You mentioned having a lot of fear, like when you very first started, and that you have kept a healthy respect, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll call it that, a healthy respect. How do you deal with that? How did you get past the fear?
Assumptions that I've gotten past the fear. I don't know. It's a balance. Sometimes I go up with the intention of doing stuff, and when I'm there, I say, "Nah, today's not the day." Either the winds aloft were a little higher than I thought they were. If things aren't right, I don't do it. Maybe I'm just off. Maybe I blew a launch, and it's like I'm just not the best me today. This is a want to do, not a have to do. So we're just going to keep the wing inflated and have a gentle flight. But I don't know. I don't have any difficulty keeping that healthy respect. It's the sport of, especially the acro side, it'll scare you and keep you well aware of the risks. I was doing helicopters a couple weeks ago, and I got like a 3/4 twist, and that's a problem. Like the first half twist is hard to get. Right? Like you're sitting on a swing set. The first half twist is a fight. Once the risers touch each other, the rest come easily. And, risers touch each other, and that was scary. I don't like it. It keeps you, I don't think getting complacent is going to be one of my problems.
See, I don't for myself either. I still have that really healthy respect every time I go up. And I was talking to Santa Croce one day, and he said, you are more, what did he say? You are more true to your inner voice than most people are. Meaning, like if something is scary, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is scary. Now I have to decide whether I want to continue or not. But there are some things that, like everybody, you were afraid at first, you were excited to drive a car, but at the same time, you probably had something happen as you were learning to drive a car that freaked you out a little bit. And then you backed off and you were a little wary, and that kind of happens, and it probably still even happens now. If you happen to be in an accident or a close call or something like that, that would happen again. But I don't know. I would like to get to the point where I could fly, maybe not without fear, at any fear, but maybe with just more, like I enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. I very much so enjoy it, but there are moments that, I don't know. Sometimes I think, wow, what am I doing? I don't know.
That's a healthy fear. Everybody needs to always keep a little bit of that in the back of their mind. I think it's self-preservation. It's what keeps us safe.
especially in the dangerous spots, right? Like if you're under 200 feet, sit up straight, pay attention. You know, you're not, it's not you and a camera right now. You don't have an audience, right? You're on your game. If you're at 2,000 feet, relax. You know, you're going to be okay.
What do you, on the double reserve video,
Yeah.
right after your double reserve throw, you were back up in the air a week later, weren't you? Doing
A few days later. Yeah. Actually, my very next flight, I had another mishap. I was doing a sat and I was on my free ride and the center A line broke. Like it wasn't pilot air or anything. It just, and it's funny, that wing looked beautiful. Like it was almost crispy. The lines were not faded or yucky. Like as an eye test, it was wonderful. But after the line broke, I sent it out for inspection, and the fabric itself was fine, but the lines, they broke too easily. So I got a whole new line set for it.
Okay. So
question
for Shane and for Woody on that note too. Have you, either of you ever, as you and Shane, you're gonna have to think way back here, and Woody, it seems like hard to believe after watching your videos that you're obviously were more reserved in your growth because you didn't start till way later after 140 hours started going into freestyle. Was there ever a time that you went, okay, now I'm starting here, and I just went to the next one, and I just said, whoa, something bad happened. Let's go back a couple steps, and maybe I need to calm down and reflect on my life, and should I even be doing this? Have you ever had a moment like that, or was it right back into the saddle each and every time?
From
You can go first.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for myself, just shortly after, I guess I'd been flying about 2 or 3 months, and shortly after I had learned how to do like a single round spiral that was kind of a nose down round spiral and then kind of a porpoise exit, nasty thing. I went up to do a demo and check the air during a class that my instructor was teaching, and I was just there to help film. And I went up and cranked that, and then I did a reversal, not knowing that you can't do that, and I kind of went line slack, and the glider blew up a little bit. I was none the wiser. I didn't actually see it happen. I just felt the line slack, and it kind of scared the hell out of me. And I think I heard the prop maybe whack the lines. It was bad. So that was, it was good. It was good that he was there to tell me what had happened, because if I had been on my own, I honestly wouldn't have known what happened or what I did wrong.
So what happened again? You were doing a wing over?
No, I just cranked like a single turn round spiral. And then coming out of it, I tried to crank one to the right, like nose down. I just pulled too late, way too late, and not enough. And, went up on my side and kind of cascaded and fell down. And I would not have been able to visualize what happened because I just felt the glider collapse. I didn't see it. And if he wasn't there to say, dude, this is what happened, this is what you did wrong, I don't know what I would have done. I probably would have had to reset, but I did jump right back into it. Yeah. And then a few months later, after I had done my first SIV clinic and I was like fairly comfortable with sats, and I had done sats on gliders that would do sat back, which is where you can get it like all the way like this. I went and tried to do that on the beginner glider that I was flying at the time, and I tried to yank it like really hard to get it into sat back, which I'd never been able to do it before on that glider. And I yanked it right into a coconut spin, which is where you over rotate and then do this really neat trick. And luckily, like 2 weeks prior, I had just done my first SIV clinic and I had done my first full stalls. So I was able to just, stay focused and do what I need to do. And the restart was no problem. It was a beginner glider. And there again, if I hadn't had, somebody videoed it for one, so I saw exactly what I did wrong. I knew exactly what I did wrong, and knew how to deal with it. And because of that, I could jump right back into it. But I didn't practice sats without somebody on the radio for probably 6 months after that, just because I was afraid of doing that again.
Okay, interesting. How about you, Woody?
Yeah, I've had a handful of things, something like that. When I first did sats and did the SIV course over the water, I did 4. They went great. I was like, cool, this is a move I'm going to take home, can do all the time. Without an instructor on the radio, not so great. The one time I spun it, and then another time I just got into a nose down spiral and wasn't able to tip it over. And I was like, all right, this move is done. This move is done until I go to another SIV and get that nailed down. It was actually with Santa. And after the second time, I picked it up for good. But I've done what Shane did, something similar to that a bunch of times. When you do a misty flip or a spin over, like you come out of the wing over and you go late, and then you tuck one side and you bury it hard. And then rather than like turn, the wing kind of pivots, spins, and you fly back the other way. Cool. Well, if you don't get it to spin, it's just a really late wing over.
That's exactly what happened. And if I known and buried the brake when it went light, it would have spun me around and it would have been okay. But
would have been cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
I've had that a bunch of times when attempt to get it to spin, to yank it hard enough can be a challenge. And on some wings, the amount of travel is so long, even if you put your hand in your pocket, it doesn't spin for you. So like that was the drop. Maybe with the Zenith, I was having that struggle sometimes. So yeah, I've had a bunch of those. Misty's gone wrong. The heli. Before the reserve day, I'd done maybe 75 helis. Not great ones. 3 revolutions, things got bad, and then exit the heli controlled and cool. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm not great at helis, but I am at a level where I can exit it safely before things get out of hand. And I was not at a level that I could exit it safely before things got out of hand. And that's why I threw the reserves. So I just sort of cut myself off from doing those over land for the next month or 2. But, we've got that boat we take out to Georgia. And I was out there doing effectively SIVs every 2 weeks or so.
Thank you, Dave. Trike Flyer, did you have a question?
Yeah, actually. So Woody, when you threw your reserve and once you came down on the ground and realized what happened and stuff, I mean, I obviously saw your video. Did you find it hard to get back up on the horse, as it were, to put that motor back on your back and to get back up there, or was it difficult?
There's a podcast called Cloud-Based Mayhem, and they have this concept of a fear injury, right? Where like, your body's fine, but your head's a little fouled up and you're not the best you yet. You're not in this like flow state. You're not in your comfort zone. Everything's a little nerve wracking. So my next flight was at a fly-in Moonshiners in Tennessee. And I was like, all right, we're going to get up here. We're going to do a Woody style flight. And I was not over it, but I was looking to get over it. And that's the one where the wing broke, where the A-line, if you lose a center A-line, the wing behaves very differently. And I was like, is this whole thing a mistake? Like, what am I doing here? And so I think that just kind of doubled it down. And it was weeks, maybe 2.5 months or so before I got over it entirely. I still, while I was, so I was twisted up, right? Rise was twisted a lot, like 7 times. And I was fighting to untwist them. And while that happened, it was music playing. It was I Need a Hero, that Bonnie Tyler maybe sang.
Yeah.
And,
Good song, by the way.
Yeah, great song.
Inappropriate. But I will forever associate that song with that near death. Like, every time I hear it, it's like, oh my gosh, and I listened to it on the way to the Moonshiners flying, like on repeat. It was like my way of just like processing it and dealing with it. So now Spotify thinks I love that song. Like, let's give Woody a little more I Need a Hero. It keeps sending it to me. Hey Woody, it's like, they have this like your daily hits playlist where they tell you some news and they play I Need a Hero. So yeah, that song is a big part of my life now. Still working. But yeah, so I'm it's like a scar, right? I'm healed, but there's a thing there, a lesson learned.
Yeah. Thank you for answering that. It's something that I've actually wanted to ask you via text or anything else, but I thought tonight might be appropriate with talking about maneuvers.
Well, there was some questions earlier, Shane. Since you gave that shout out earlier, one question is, did you ever see him get trained by God?
Oh, shout out. I was like, who did I give a shout out to? No.
You were never in the Almighty's presence? No. Okay.
Not that I know of.
Can you kite up a pole?
I could kite up a pole.
Can you still?
At one point, I haven't in a long time.
Oh, that's cool. All right.
I'll tell you a funny story about kiting up a pole. My first PPG incident, 2 months after I'd been flying, I went and tried to do that up a fence post with a cop car behind me at the beach. The cop car was there to kick us off the beach. I didn't know that at the time. And I took an asymmetric deflation while I was kiting up this pole, and it shock reinflated, pulled me into the cop car. I had no helmet on. It was really embarrassing. That was my first of 2 injuries in PPG. So that is it's a pretty dangerous thing to do, to kite up a pole. If somebody can do it, give them props.
With that being said, do you think that a potential student of paramotoring looking to get into the sport should really go ahead and qualify an instructor, whether they can or cannot kite up a pole?
No,
No.
I wouldn't say that.
Others out there, you need to. I think you did.
It's more of a trick, you know. It's anytime you see kiting done with your fingers on the strings like this, it's not flying. That's my take on it, you know. It's a trick. It means that you definitely have an understanding of the dynamic of the glider very well. Doesn't mean that you can teach judgment. It doesn't mean that you can teach ethics, you know, things of that nature. So yeah, well, I do really appreciate, I was actually trying to watch Woody's video about this just before logging on here. I was like, I wanted to see that video where he was talking about how good your instructor should be. And I was just kind of reflecting on my opinion of that. And yeah, I've never been of the opinion that you need, you know, only the best pilot in the world could teach a pilot, you know, because the best pilots I know aren't even good instructors. They can't even explain what they're doing. So, yeah.
Yankee Paramotor asks, can Shane lay out line of progression that he suggests? As an example, order of maneuvers. And I think you kind of go through this in the videos, but if you could go into a little more detail. Oh,
sure. Yeah. And this is why I insisted that Woody be here, because he might have a completely different philosophy on this. But what I like to see people do is to learn energy management. I think that's best done by low flying and sort of learning the dynamics of slow and fast flying and how quickly you learn or lose altitude, you know. And in the video series, there's a thing on round spirals because I know people practice them anyway. We have it in the video just so that it's to practice exits, spiral exits, like how to bleed off energy. And that's kind of the point of having the spirals in there. I think that's the classic progression, is people start foot dragging or they start spiraling, one or the other, if they're going on their own. And we kind of put it in there as a cautionary tale. Don't do this, but if you're going to do it for this purpose. And then I think, you know, working on really small wingovers is great. But I think the like bread and butter of that video series, I think after you learn very basic wingovers, you should start learning asymmetric spirals, which are a really weird maneuver that's really hard to grasp until you've learned it, you know, and until you can do it. I used to read the descriptions of it prior to being able to do it once I knew it was important, and I couldn't understand it until I started practicing it. And it took me almost a year to get good at them, you know. I think that's kind of my, you know, foot drag, learn to bleed off energy, you know, in those kind of spiral exits, small wingovers, asymmetric spirals, the type that are made for descent technique, which is really fast going down. Then learn the asymmetric spirals that look like barrel rolls. And if you can do those in both, you know, in both directions, you're already doing giant wingovers. So that's kind of my progression. That's my 1-2 step to acro stardom. And the good thing about all those maneuvers is they look really cool to people on the ground. So you don't need to go beyond that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I've got so much to say. So first of all, I think Shane nails it.
Good.
On the one area where we split is, to me, the low stuff, like the foot dragging, and he teaches, I don't know, call it porpoising, but, you know, jumping over fences and small trees and stuff like that, to me is almost a different discipline than the wing over asymmetric spiral stuff. But the rest of, like, to me, that's like 2 forks in the road, right? But learn how to do some kind of round spiral, right? Nose down spiral or 35-degree spiral so that you can exit it. And you might find yourself in a spot where you need that spiral to exit your wing over because you're not good at calming them down yet. That was a phase that I existed in for a while. So there's the spiral, small wing overs. I have an SIV instructor that calls those wingy dingies. Like that's not even a wing over.
Wing dings, yeah.
And then small asymmetric spirals, big asymmetric spirals, and then great big wing overs. And he even quickly throws in barrel rolls in there, which is basically an asymmetric spiral where you swing through the gate a little bit farther. That's all it is. You just wait. But that nails it. And I love the video series, partly just because it's hard to figure out that progression as you're progressing. Like I didn't know asymmetric spirals were a stepping stone on the way to really big wing overs. That wasn't clear to me. And then there's some other stuff that I taught. I had Eric Farewell also kind of mentored me during this phase, and Shane did a lot too. But they would be like, all right, find something on the ground, a fence, a road, or whatever, then stay parallel to it. If you're doing wing overs and they're not the same size each way, then you suck at wing overs, right? You've got a bad side. So asymmetric spiral that side until it's as good as your good side. And then you should be able to do 180s each way and get that right. My question for Shane is this: are wing overs safe to learn? And it fits in this context. I feel like stalls, well, certainly helis, like there's a lot of things, maybe sats, where when they go wrong, they go so horribly wrong, it's a really big problem, right? Johnson got gift wrapped when he learned full stalls and threw his reserve, and it was yucky.
On a beginner wing.
Yeah, on a Mojo, yeah. So, but wing overs, again, through my paper towel roll of experience as opposed to a breadth of students, the failure state on a wing over is like a 20% wingtip collapse that you pop out after things settle down. I see the risk is it's scary, but I haven't seen anyone get hurt doing wing overs up high.
Yeah. But I know you've probably been to more like formal SIV clinics than I have now. So you've probably seen more people progressing through it than I have by now. I know you're on board with this because you, like you said, were sort of apprehensive. There are those guys that just grab, shitload of brake when they go to do wing overs, and they get 60%ers, one after another when they're learning. And, you see enough sideways 60% collapses, there's eventually going to be a cravat. So what I'd say compared to anything negative, spin stalls, sats, they're only dangerous if you screw them up. But
that's true with most of these moves.
Yeah. But, spin stalls, they kind of, at least at my level, they have a random factor that I can't, like you said yourself, after you'd done like 75 helis, you thought you had to work to a point. But it seems to me like there is more of a random factor in that, whereas wing overs, yeah, I don't know if stalls are 80% really dangerous, maybe wing overs are 20. But one thing that's different about paramotors is that with our wing loading, it's usually easier. And I probably wouldn't if I was a paragliding only instructor, even if there was like a lack of good information out there, I probably wouldn't have laid out this progression for somebody free flying on weighing 190 pounds on a 28-meter wing and a 15-pound harness. I probably would have dialed it back a little bit on the wing over progression. But because we fly, we're 190 pound, well, let's just say average paramotor pilot's 10 pounds heavier, and a 70-pound motor plus gas and a 2 meters smaller glider. Because of that wing loading, it makes it a little bit, more collapse resistant, I'd say.
Does the reflex make it collapse resistant? How does that factor in?
Well, I don't, I'm never been on board with people starting on reflex. Well, not that I'm not on board with it, but I think 50% of the population out there should start on classic gliders. And I think that learning wing overs on classic gliders is great because you get little teeny benign collapses when you screw it up and you get instant feedback. Whereas a reflex glider or a small reflex glider won't tell you until you really screw it up. And yeah, that's kind of my thing. So how safe are wing overs? The wingtip to the horizon, nothing's going to happen. Well, I won't say that, but not, like you said, the little wingtip collapses are going to happen. Maybe that's why, in that progression, I say go work on asymmetric spirals until you get that down, and then go back to wing overs.
I have a question for Woody right there. Woody, I want you to put yourself in my mind for a second, cloudy as it may be. But here I am. I'm watching these Freestyle 101 videos. Okay. And I'm feeling pretty good about my spirals. I'm pretty confident in my deeper wing overs now. But no, I still know I'm respectful enough to know that I still have a lot of work to make it exactly where I want it to be. But I'm getting there. And now in my mind, okay, as soon as it warms up and I don't need these big bulky gloves and I can feel the lines and everything, I'm ready to go to my next step. How confident should I be? How comfortable should I be? Because I'm really fearful of going into the next step. If you're in my mind, where are you?
How big are your wing overs now? When you look at the wing, is the entire thing
As of
below the horizon?
yesterday, the tip is well below the horizon. I would say I'm coming over
No,
like this.
the other tip.
This. Probably from here.
The other tip. That's the beginner tip. What about the advanced tip?
No. I would say I'm more than halfway over, like this.
Okay. So you're about parallel with the wing. You're really safe there. Yeah, almost. I hate to say nothing can go wrong, right? But because things can go wrong. But if you're at altitude, like you haven't entered the scary stuff yet. The scary stuff is when the other tip is below the horizon. Now you're over the wing, in a pretty significant way, and you can get unloaded. And if you go too late, the longer you wait to swing through the gate, the more vertical that next wing over gets. And it's time to play with those. And by the way, when you play with that, you know how long you can wait to swing through the gate? It should be in an asymmetric spiral, right? When you add that reversal to it, that adds danger to it too. On the asymmetric spiral, you tend not to, the error case is just, one tip coming in. With the reversal, the error case can be like running out of energy and hitting that wing.
Okay.
That's why, when they do more advanced moves like Misty flips and such, they usually do it to the same side as the last turn.
Okay. So as far as going into that next move or maneuver, start playing with it, start toying with it, grow
inch by inch, right? Build bigger inch by inch. And my thought is, are you working the asymmetric spirals? Because that's the key. Like people think the wing overs are the cool part. Like wing overs are cool, I guess, but asymmetric spirals are cool. That's where you can, build some big energy. People on the ground can't tell the difference. They just think you're doing wing overs to one side. Even other pilots don't really know. And as far as what looks cool, Shane put it pretty well too. Like asymmetric spirals and wing overs are neat looking. When I do acro, if I want to impress someone on the ground, they don't care about helis. They look benign. They're just kind of spinny top thing, like whatevs. But you do a wing over, and it's like, oh my god, that guy got upside down. That's if that's your goal, then that gets it done.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say I would add to that just everybody's focused on the outcome, like how big is this wing over going to get? How big am I going to get it by the end of this month or whatnot in my practice? And I would say try and focus more on like Woody said, picking that reference heading and coming back to it, because you'll hear me say it quite a bit in that wing over segment, where it's fine tuning your weight shift and making your weight shift from left to right symmetrical, making your brake inputs, and practicing that timing, that look lean 1-2, look lean 1-2, and getting that reference heading. Try and do that, and once you have that hammered into where it's muscle memory, your progress will go a lot faster after that, I think.
Yeah, the reference heading's huge, right? If you're doing wing overs, according to me, you should be, if I'm headed towards you, the next one should be straight against you, and the next one should be right back at you. That's a good wing over. If I'm doing big to the right and then crappy to the left and big to the right, and bit by bit we're turning our way around, then you suck at wing overs. It's okay. We all sucked at wing overs at one point, but you do. That's how that is. If it's an asymmetric spiral, I like a 3/4 turn. Right? You should be going in this way, and when you're done, you're headed that way, and like a clock every time, working your way 90 degrees. If you're not doing that, you suck. It's okay. That's why you're practicing, but you do. So like, instead of just the size of the wing over or the size of the asymmetric spiral, you can measure yourself on the control of it. Are you able to maintain heading? Are they all the same size? Is your right side the same as your left side? You get that stuff, and you're really learning how to do this. If you're
Mhm.
just going as big as you can and you're all lopsided and lame, then that's what you are.
Um, Thank you. One of a friend of mine is in the chat, and one of the toughest guys I know because he flies foot launching with a Fresh Breeze Monster, and he also does paragliding as well. And that's Tim Garvey. Shane, he wants to know, what do you like better, PPG or PG?
That's hard. Yeah, I guess if I had to pick one, like overall, I'd probably take PPG, and that's just because of the like travel potential. It seems like it's sort of, there's just more places you can go. Nobody goes to Iceland on a free flying trip.
No.
If they do, all they do is ridge soar. So it's like, that's what I like about it, is you can get anywhere. But I probably do find myself smiling a little bit more when I free fly.
Yeah, I'm looking
So
forward.
that is the answer.
Yeah.
So the question that Dave and I always ask is, and we understand that these two weather conditions, we asked Woody this as well. These two weather conditions are completely different, but if you had a perfect free flying day and you had a perfect PPG day, which one would you rather do?
I'm going to interject, Nicole. PPG trike all day. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Shane,
So
I was
which
talking to
one?
Johnson about this. I'm not going to influence him. And I was like, I feel like the perfect free flight day is better, right? Yeah, that's the day I land. I feel like I accomplished something. Whereas every paramotor flight, of course, I did what I wanted to do. And then Johnson came back. He's like, I don't know. The perfect paramotor day is one in which you were able to legally fly above clouds. It's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. It's the flight of your dreams, and put it back down. And it's like, duh, that might be better than free flight. Can't fly above clouds in free flight mostly.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, my most perfect free flight day versus my most perfect. Yeah, probably the best paramotor day is better than the best free flight day in my case anyway. But that's, I'm not the mountain flying and cross country camp in free flying at all. Like the majority of what I've done is ridge soaring and like thermal ridge soaring, like and a tiny bit of mountain flying, and then some over the lake, acro stuff and whatnot. And it's like free flight is more like a game of chess, where you're playing against yourself, and that's kind of what cross country free flight is like. So it's more challenging, stimulating. But yeah, I've had some really good cross country flights, like it was one of the easiest cross country flights ever, but I did like 50-mile cross country from like southern Washington to northern Oregon, and flew over the Columbia, flew through rain over clouds, and landed in this tiny church, froze my ass off, walked over to Starbucks and got a flat white, and I was like, damn, that was awesome. That's a 2-hour drive. I just did it like, however long it took me. And yeah, that was like one of my best days in PPG, and another 5 best days were this past summer in Iceland. And yeah, incredible stuff. So
That's
I have
amazing.
a Shane
Live
question.
videos.
So asking you because you've traveled so much, East and West Coast, bumpy air, right? I hear people talk about midday flying and the insanity of it. But here in North Carolina, it's really not that insane. Like our thermals are not that rocking. A friend of mine just broke the North Carolina cross country record in free flight, 70 miles. It's the farthest anyone has ever gone in this state. He's world class. He's top 50 on the planet, and that's what he could manage. I don't think the air is just as bad here. Then I went to Utah, and it was bumpy. I was more concerned ridge soaring on the north side than I was full stalling over the water. Is that the lack of humidity? Am I right on this, or did I just pick a bumpy day? In my head, everything's just a little mild here because the air is humid and doesn't change temperatures as dramatically as dry air. That's my thought. So can you talk about that?
Not intelligently, but I can give you my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I've observed is more humid air is definitely more stable, less mechanical turbulence. But here, the dry air, we have higher lapse rate, which as I understand it, makes for faster thermals and bullet thermals and whatnot. And I've been told by instructors that teach her that this is like one of the kind of big areas, you know, like our mountains are a little bit nasty, but going down and flying in Bahia de Bravo compared to here, you know, that's big air in a completely different way. It's like big, fat, wide thermals. You still get a crazy climb rate, but they're not so small that you're shooting in and out of them, you know. And that's not like an overly humid place, but just the terrain there is different, you know. Like you said, the temperatures don't change as much throughout the day. And yeah, I think like Florida is one of the easiest places I've flown, even when it looks overdeveloped, unless it's gonna like straight gust front, you could almost always get away with it. But I've also had, well, a bad day in Florida. It's like, oh, I can't fly 20 feet off the ground because it's too bumpy. Whereas, you know, and the takeoff and landing are scary because of that. But I don't know, you know, I tried to apply that logic in Wisconsin 2 summers ago when we went to Oshkosh, and man, I got just knocked around and I got scared to death. Just think, you know, trying to apply that, oh, this terrain looks just like the East Coast, I'm gonna try it. And yeah, I mean, it was windy and it was.
Did Tucker make a video that day?
He sure did.
Yeah, he had a fright in that day.
Yep. And I had already landed. Yeah, watched some dude on a mini plane like porpoising, almost crashed really bad. And yeah, so so I try not to make general statements about areas that you know, it's like, oh, where you live, it's easy to fly, because that's the logic I tried to apply there, and I got the shit kicked out of me. So sorry. But yeah, what was the question?
It was about Easton and bumpy air, and I just,
yeah, well, you have your own challenges there, you know, because I've flown in New Hampshire where it's coastal. It's, you know, 20, and Boston, it's coastal. So it's like nice air, but the fields are this big, you know, and you get up and try and go somewhere, you're like, oh, this is dumb, you know.
yeah.
So yeah, everywhere has their own challenges.
It's easy for me to preach that you need to be at 2,000 feet or so, because you need that to have good LZs all the time. You know, if I flew at 500 feet, I would spend half my time without a safe out. Because if you don't maintain the land here, it turns into a forest.
I got a bunch of questions here I want to ask from the chat. 2 questions for you, Woody. First one, I got to go way back for this one. First one's from, I'm going to ask both of them and you can answer them both. Jim CR120, question for Woody. What's up with the videos? The PPG community craves them. Will there be more regular posts? What can a patient but eager community expect? And the second question is from Greg Anthony Harris. Question for Woody. Did you find resistance from your family and friends regarding going back up after the double reserve throw? If so, how did you handle that?
So on the video thing, I try not to make bad videos. And I think that's what would happen if I showed you more of my flights. They're all the same. I launch from my yard. I try a handful of helis, and then I land, maybe some sats and wingovers or what have you. I go to the same couple of fields because the people that live there welcome me. And that's most of my flights. If I do something different, if I go to 11,000 feet or meet up with friends, or that, I'm more apt to make a video for those days. But I try not to get into the repetitive just from my house, or make a video where I don't have anything to say. You know, I'm not that smart. I don't have cool things to say every flight. And then the resistance from my family thing. No, I don't know that anyone really got it. I felt like I was the only one that understood that I almost died that day. And my wife is just like, yeah, it's just the dude I married, right? And when we were little, he surfed hurricanes, and then he got into the off-roading, and he was rolling his car every weekend, and then he got into the motorcycles, and now he's on the paramotor. And I don't think she recognized that like this was a lot bigger deal than rolling a car in a roll cage.
Okay.
And I'm happy with it. She doesn't know.
What'd you learn from Santa Croce, both of you?
He's the one that dialed in my sats. And, you know, one of the, okay, Santa Croce oozes wisdom, and he's like groovy. That was my experience.
Groovy.
Right? Like, I almost, like, after training with him, there were parts of me that wanted to like be more like him, but I can't pull it off. Like, I'm not groovy. I'm not like,
I can't pull it off either.
Right? Like, he has it's like soul matters to him, or like karma or spirits or something. And It does to me, but if I were to say it, it's came off insincere. Like I don't know.
When he speaks, it makes sense. It touches me. Yeah.
Yeah. I like Santa. And sometimes he says things, I'm a terrible student, and I'll like disagree with him and then process it and absorb it and come around to getting the message he was trying to sink in with me. And I'm like, man, he doesn't know how influential he is on me. He thinks I'm just a brick wall because I acted like one, but his message did hit home. So yeah, so I like Santa. The specifics of what he taught me were probably the set. I like I said, I'd done some before, took it home, didn't have it anymore, went to Santa's, and he taught me and I kept it.
You know, it's funny. I'm sure a lot of people, Nicole, I know, trained with him. For the first time I got to see Santa was at the Swanee flying. And it was just like you're in the presence of it was weird. I mean, it's like he's sitting there doing the wing, he's sitting there turning around, not even touching the lines, and he's still kiting the wing. And it's just like, how does he do that? So it's just so much. Yeah, he oozes information and seemingly greatness too. It's pretty cool. Shane, how about you?
I think he definitely dialed in my wing overs, stalls and spins. And then, you know, a lot of that time was spent learning, because I got my instructor rating and my tandem rating through him. So most of what I learned from him was how to teach, I think, and a little bit about how to run a school, but how to identify different personalities with students and different approaches that don't work with, you know, different people. Just yeah. But as far as specifics go, the first, you know, I'm just sort of assuming that somebody's asking because they want to know what they might be learning in their first SAV with him. But yeah, he definitely dialed in the wing overs, how to tow, how to spin, how to stall, and how to do sats in a way that I could do it without somebody on the radio, which helped a lot.
That's good. Question from Ripman Ryden wants to know your thoughts on the use of speed bar.
Is that me or everybody? Who goes first?
You're the guest.
Yeah. Well, you know, all of my European friends always rip on us Americans for never flying with it. They're like, I can't believe you take off without a speed bar. It's like, well, they're clumsy, and for paramotoring, you know, if we have trimmers, we don't necessarily need them. I really do enjoy dynamic flying with it, you know, especially on a glide that has a PK system, and combining speed bar with wing overs and energy dives and making dynamic landings and all that stuff. I remember the first glider I ever flew with a PK was the Dude X Snake, I think it was. And like my favorite thing to do was to come from like 60 feet and stomp the speed bar and let it just dive at the ground. This is super dangerous, don't do this. And start to like pull the speed bar off really slow to start a flare, like right at about 5 feet, and then pick up flare as soon as the speed bar was in with brakes. And Jeff Goen told me that a lot of people died doing that like years back. So I stopped doing it, but it was really fun, you know, and I really enjoy that dynamic flying.
Don't listen to him, guys. This is where it is. Boring landings, exciting flights. Don't do that shit. Yeah. You're not Tucker.
Yeah, but you know, it's not so much, depending on where you live, it's not really needed in paramotoring so much if you're flying a paramotor specific wing. So I'm a big fan of just not worrying about it for the first year or so. And then once you get bored with that, start flying with it. If you like it, keep it.
So a good friend of mine who trained with Brad Ganuscio, so I'm going based upon from this, says that Brad is would rather you fly with speed bar than to let your trimmers out. He says safer. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's true. It is, without a doubt. And in, you know, the free flight type conditions that free flight pilots are used to, that's definitely, you know, why you don't fly with trimmers out. If your glider does blow up, it's going to be really hard to recover. And I've had that happen, you know, trims out, had a deflation happen where I had to yank the trim back in before I can even
and with speed bars instant, right? You come off the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
as long as you have
instant.
the wherewithal to point your toe, it comes right off. So it is good. The problem is our gliders aren't designed to do that. Paramotor wings aren't designed to use speed and brakes together. And you know, a typical free flight pilot goes on glide and goes straight. They're not like thermaling with a speed bar on. So it just comes down to flying style, I think. But generally, I only let the glider handles not so great with the trims out, so I only let them out to go cruise somewhere. And if I have the speed bar, better, I'll get there faster. So I'm not a big fan of like flying around with the trims out low.
If I do a long cross country, like I'm going somewhere, you know, sometimes it's been a little while since we've done it, but my friends and I, you know, we go to the beach or something 200 miles away. I definitely bring a speed bar for that. Mostly because, like, you don't know, what if the winds don't do what they were forecasted and you have a headwind or you want to get somewhere a little faster. Sometimes that it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Cool. But for most of my flights, it's a pain in the butt to connect it. On a paramotor, you have to take the sister clip off and put it through a couple of pulleys, and that sucks. And they can come unconnected and if disconnected. If they come disconnected in free flight, it's no big deal. You just hook it back up. If it happens on a motor, well, then it hits your prop, it damages your speed bar, and maybe even damages your prop. It can be pretty significant. Delaminate. It's pretty much a motor out. I don't know. On a motor, I find that 9 times out of 10, more than that, it's more trouble than it's worth. It would be nice if paramotors, probably the harness guys in particular, had a good way to store it so that you could leave it on the paramotor all the time and know that it wasn't going to come loose and find its way to the prop. But as it is, like, what do you do? Tie it, have it dangle. If you forget to, I would like to be able to forget to clip it in and still be okay because it's been tucked away in the harness in some safe way. But I haven't seen anyone that does that well.
You're doing mostly freestyle though. I mean, like on the time that you flew with Mark, that long distance flight, did you use a speed bar then? Do you go up with the speed bar knowing you're going to make a long distance flight or not even bother with it?
I did use a speed bar actually. What happened was the belt came
I'm
loose
sorry.
on my motor.
Would you mind? I said Mark, but maybe some people who are watching don't know what I'm referring to that you do. Would you mind sharing that?
Yeah. So I did 2 flights with Mark. We might be thinking of different ones. One we went to Virginia, one we went to the beach. Well, the time we went to the beach, my belt came loose. I didn't get it was spinning instead of spinning the prop. So I had to tighten it. I'm behind everybody. I rode speed bar for the last hour of that flight, just trying to catch up to everyone. And I eventually did. So it was one of those things where I needed it and was glad I had it. That's what these longer flights can be like. If I was in the Icarus, I would hook up the speed bar. Just in case it's the right time to use it. And then for free flight, same thing. Typically the wind's blowing up the hill. At the top there, it's at its fastest at that spot. You're right where you're trying to land, I think. And you might need the speed bar to prevent getting blown off the back, which is a real problem. So you want to have it hooked up.
Cool. Shane, I got a question for you. And this is, I was kind of hoping we'd have some questions. And I know we're coming to the end of the show here, but I was kind of hoping, if anybody had some specific questions, hey, I'm performing a maneuver, this is an issue I'm having, that they could address them. But I'll give you one that I'm kind of fine as I'm doing some spins, some turns, and now I've got some good gust of wind right in my face as I'm turning into the gust. How do you get through that to make it a consistent move?
I don't totally understand the question.
I'm doing a spiral.
Oh, you're doing a spiral.
Yeah, and now it's let's say the wind is coming out of the west, and I'm now spinning into the west, and it slows me way down. Is there a way that I can cut through that?
Well, it's all relative, unless you're going through like a gradient, or unless you're going through like a shear layer or whatnot. But how high are you when you're doing this? Explain to me what's happening specifically.
I just, it doesn't matter, I guess, the altitude. But Rick, what are you doing, Rick? I think Rick was dancing to the YMCA song. What were you doing there, Rick?
What Captain Kurt does. He does it. Hand over the clenched fist.
Oh, okay.
Whatever it says, he makes sense.
I'm turning and I'm going facing into the wind now as I'm making my turn, and it feels like it slows me way down. And I want to try to keep that speed. Go ahead, Woody.
You're in the air. your wing doesn't know if it's headed into the wind or if it has a tailwind. There is no device that has ever been invented or will be invented that can measure airspeed without referencing the ground. And your motor and you are not referencing the ground in flight. If something's going wrong, it's not the air, it's the pilot. It's not because in this time around you're facing into the wing, whereas some wind, whereas some previous time you were facing against the wind. That's not it. It's all relative. There's something happening there that's unrelated to the wind.
Okay.
What it likely is it's that inertia swing. It's if you're trying to come out of a spiral and you give it a little bit too much outside brake and get your body swinging back down low, it takes a ton of weight shift and the right amount of brake to stop your body from doing. I better sit this down so you can see my hands. It takes like a ton of weight shift and brake to get your body to stop and go back into that spiral. So that might be what you're experiencing instead. Okay. But if you are like really seeing a difference or a like perceived difference in wind, it's probably because you're low and there's rotor or shear or
could be that
something of that nature.
Wait, are you doing
Woody,
low acro to learn?
Sorry?
Are you learning with low acro? Is that what you said?
Well, thanks everybody for showing up tonight. It's now 9:20. No, I'm getting up there.
Dude, low acro is the dumbest.
No, I'm not
thing,
getting
man.
that low. I'm not.
Every time you see some guy doing low acro at a fly-in,
I mute him.
No one's impressed. No one's
Thank you,
impressed.
Woody.
Doing
There
low.
are 10
Appreciate
people.
that, Woody.
There are all these Shane Denherders and Eric Farewells and the senior guys in this sport saying he's a dummy. No one is like, wow, look how great his low acro is. No one says that. So if you think you're showing off, you're showing your ass.
Next question.
I do two things. Back to the speed bar. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between trims and speed bar? Obviously, from what I have measured on my free flight glider, my angle of incidence changes the same amount. I saw that smile because you knew that I knew what the difference was.
I can tell you're a Santa Cruz student. It's not just because of the backdrop, but yeah. Go on.
Well, yeah, on the south side.
Mm-hmm.
So the angle of incidence is changed the exact same way whenever I do at least my trimmers. When I measure my trims, my risers, and I measure my speed bar pulled all the way in, it's the same amount. Like I've actually measured it. So
if you measure
for me,
like the.
Yeah. So I have measured like if you have your mullions level, right? I have this Gin Bolero 6, but it's got motor risers on it. So I have trims, even though it's a free flight wing. So I have measured the amount of trim I have and the angle of the mullions. And then I've also measured whenever I have the speed bar pulled all the way and the angle of the mullions. So on my particular glider, there's no difference.
Yeah, so that means it's like a 50-50 type system. And this is different from glider to glider. But a Bolero 4, for instance, if you let the trimmers out, it'd only let about 30% of the total speed system out. So the speed bar would be like 70. And older reflex wings, especially, they were like 40-60, and it really made a difference if you did speed bar or trimmers first. I think most of them are coming around to 50-50, but paramotor pilots and paramotor gliders tend to have more in the like some of the newer gliders have 60% in the trims because they know most paramotor pilots don't want to stomp on the speed bar. So it just completely depends on the glider. But yeah, it's a good thing to know about your own glider.
Well, it is. And like one of the things that we talked about was like the first 10% of speed bar actually makes the glider much more firm, if you will, like it's more loaded or more dense, less susceptible to collapse. Is that with all gliders or just mine? Because
I'm not sure. I don't know if there's a like a correlation there of or if that's a hard and fast rule. I don't know. I'd have to think about. Actually, I'd have to see the risers, like the rate at which they spread apart at different, speed bar settings. I have an opinion on that, but
Seems like it'd
I'm
be
not
tied
sure.
into what reflex wings do, right? Like they tend to put a little more weight on the front risers to make it a little more collapse resistant, but dynamic when it does collapse or deflate. So the beginning of speed bar would have that same effect, a little more dynamic if it were to deflate, but a little more resistant.
Maybe. I think the
Well-
little bit more resistance might just be the increase in speed and increase in pressure, rather than like a CG shift. But
Oh,
I couldn't say for sure.
right. I'm not sure
So-
either.
I mean, if you're looking at like a traditional glider and this is the leading edge and then this is the trailing edge and you're looking at a traditional glider, if you put up the speed bar, then you're basically doing this, right?
If it's a current glider, it's probably doing a little bit of everything. It's more like
Okay.
doing this. On like an old style 2009 era reflex glider, the trimmers would only let the trailing edge up, and they would add the reflex in, and then you would stomp the speed bar to bring the nose down. But I think it works a little bit more symmetrically in current gliders. But again, it varies from model to model. They're all over the place. But on your glider, it should be pretty symmetrical, like I would think.
That's what I'm thinking. So you're basically changing your angle of incidence, lifting up the back, bring the front down.
Mm.
All I know is that my glider acts a lot different with the trims out than with the trims in.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's like that with all gliders.
Different in what way?
It is a lot more. I feel everything more. Like it's more dynamic anyway, but it's
More rigid.
yeah, like
Yeah, when you hit a bump.
everything feel like I feel everything.
Yeah, because your glider at slow trim feels like a big balloon over you that's all happy. And when you hit with bumps, you're like, whatever. But yeah, if you let the trims out, it pressurizes, goes faster, higher internal pressure, you're gonna feel those bumps. And you go through the bumps faster. So yeah.
Well, and like whenever I purposefully bought this glider because I wanted to learn how to free fly. So that's the purpose for buying this glider. And I'm still learning how to do that because I do feel like free flight pilots, and this is probably not a popular opinion, but I do feel like free flight pilots are better pilots than motor pilots. And like you said, it's because of the chess game, right? Like a better. Maybe I see you're thinking.
I would argue that unless they're acro pilots or they fly speed wings, they probably suck at landing compared to paramotor
They
pilots.
always suck at landing.
And if they're mountain only pilots, they suck at kiting.
That part I won't. The other thing is, because altitude is so precious in free flight, they don't get anywhere near the wing over experience. You know, I joined this. We put together this club for our acro thing, and I thought all the free flight pilots would be really good. No.
Well, that's because they're trying to maintain altitude.
Right.
They're trying to go down.
Right. So they suck at wing overs. They're scared. They barely pull on it. That's just. Whereas on a paramotor, if you want to go from 3,000 feet to 1,000 and do that all day and know that you'll get right back to 3,000 anytime you want, you can practice that sort of thing. So it's a different skill set. To say that free flight pilots are much better, I think, is off target. They're much better at keeping the wing open because paramotor pilots usually don't have that challenge at all, right? You're on your phone, right? That's not something paramotor pilots ever fuss with. They're much better, obviously, at finding thermals. They might have a deeper understanding of weather, right? Whereas all we need to know is calm. That's calm. It's late. It cooled down. It's sunset. They're reading skew charts and other nonsense and things I'm still getting my arms around. So there are a lot of pilot aspects of them that are better, but
And
to just
that's what I meant.
okay, yeah, but I would argue that some of the acro skills, landing on your feet, those are pilot skills too.
Mhm.
Shane, I'm going to ask you a couple more questions here because we're going to wrap up
Sure.
here. And
Mhm.
I've got 5 questions from the chat. And so
Oh,
we're going to rapid fire these at you.
good.
For infinite tumble, trims in or out?
That's a Woody question. I don't even think they put trimmers on. Did they even put trimmers on acro gliders anymore?
I could
They
think
used
of
to in, like,
one that
2012.
does it. It's the gradient freestyle, but
Oh yeah,
by and
That's
large,
not
everyone's into the twisted shit now. And if you put
Yeah.
trimmers on them, he'll let one go. So you can't do that.
yeah. Who asked that question?
That
There would be
was
somebody
JP
trolling.
Tulo. And
Okay.
JP also has another question too. He said, where
Oh,
do you-
the answer is I have no idea. I've never come close to a tumble or the tumble progression at all.
And
Like I've done 2 asymmetric sats.
follow-up question for that is, where do you keep your trimmers for wing overs?
I personally keep so it depends on the glider. If it's a classic glider, usually slow or like 1 inch out. And if it's a reflex glider, it's usually trim neutral because that's usually where I have like the best glide and the best handling. But something I've noticed is that like lightweight pilots seem to like to do wing overs with the trims all the way out. For a heavyweight guy like myself, the glider doesn't handle very well with the trims out. So yeah, but if you're gonna, especially if you're gonna make mistakes and take deflations and whatnot, you're gonna want to yard those trimmers in so that when you do have a significant emotional event, you have a better chance at getting the glider back open.
Okay. Fly Swamper says, can you talk about how you store or connect your speed bar for launch on a paramotor in a little more detail?
Yeah, for myself, it's kind of a big pain in the butt. Basically, typically what I'll do is I'll walk my wing out, lay it out, and then I'll go grab my paramotor. And at that point, once I strap it in, I'll hook my sister clips together right in front of me so that they don't dangle and get lost and get routed somewhere they're not supposed to be. And then, I go to hook up for a forward, and that's when I unhook and rehook and then reach way under it. And I check those bad boys because like Woody said, if they get disconnected, it does happen, especially if you're like flubbing launches over and over again. So it's like, it's just part of the pre-flight to make sure they're still hooked up. But yeah, I typically hook it together in the harness when the paramotor's stored. Then I unhook it, put the paramotor on, hook it in front of me until I go hook it up. So always keep them hooked together for myself.
Okay. Thank you. JT Wordle says, Shane, when you think of new flyers, what keeps you awake at night the most with their behaviors? And then he also says, thanks guys for a great show.
Behaviors, new pilot behaviors.
I was wondering if it's behaviors or attitudes.
Yeah, it's kind of well, on the attitude front, it would be like just kind of callously breaking rules, like specifically flying over built up areas, because that does happen quite a bit. But I think the thing that like worries me safety wise is people going into acro and trying, or thinking they want to start acro and starting to do really hard round spirals and practicing those over and over again. That's probably the biggest thing.
Okay. Brian Helmenack, a member of the Toledo Flyboys, says, I may have missed it, but and you didn't, Shane's daily driver, no time, grab one wing that you won't be mad that you grabbed. What's your one wing, your go-to?
My favorite one in recent years, I think, has been the it's currently Niviak Kubik, but that's more of I'm not flying as often right now, so I need to dial it back. But yeah, Woody, what's the U-turn wing that you have, Woody?
The Progress?
That you hate? Do you hate it?
No, it doesn't sat great, but it flies well in every other regard.
Yeah, like that's that
Oh,
was a
but
really good one.
oscillates too. I don't have a wing in my. I have like 10 wings right now. Every freaking one of them oscillates.
I think
I
it's
need
you.
an 11th wing, one that doesn't oscillate for
It's you.
days where I want to just.
I'll send you my cubic. If it oscillates, it's you.
Okay. No, my Ramaflex didn't oscillate. My Mojo, no, my Muse 3 didn't oscillate. My I don't know. I've had a couple wings that didn't oscillate, but as I got these more advanced, all my acro wings do, my free ride does, stuff like that.
My Bolero does.
Does it?
Yeah.
My
Yeah,
stuff
if your mo
does.
Trims out. It does.
adding a motor will do that. Yeah, I think that's probably been my favorite in recent years. I haven't tried a Colorado. I think that one looks like it'd be a good, based on what I've heard.
Colorado is. I have tried it. I like 2 hours on one.
Hmm.
It's about as dynamic as the Progress is, nearly as dynamic, and it doesn't oscillate. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, it'd probably be a good one. Yeah, it changes so much though, and I haven't flown a lot of current things, so yeah, I think that was probably my favorite, most recent, but that's 2 years ago.
Well, guys, I know there's some other questions that came up too, but I know we've asked you a lot of questions tonight. Really, really appreciate you both being here tonight. Thank you so much. Shane, thanks again for putting out those videos. They've really helped me a lot.
You bet. Thank you.
Again,
Yeah.
guys, for everybody that's watching, if you go into the description of the video, you'll find the videos that you can order on Vimeo for Shane. They're worth every penny. They're really great stuff, great information.
Can I talk about the videos? It's $80, right? You hear $80 and you're like, well, that's not free. I'm used to YouTube.
Right.
Way cheaper than an injury. So much better than an injury. And you can rent them, but I don't suggest it. A friend of mine rented them, but he didn't master all the things in them is it 3 months, 1 month? How long do you
1 month, isn't it?
It's 1 month. You can upgrade from that though. The idea of the rental is if you're already pretty dialed and just want to pick up a couple tips, you can do that. But yeah, when we first embarked on this, I tried to make it a free video and it totally sucked. It only had 3 segments to it. It had terrible audio. I showed it to my friends to get feedback, other people, and they were like, no, dude, you need to like hire a video guy and get an external view and you need to like do interview style. So it just ended up costing, 50 times more than we thought it would to make it. So that's why it ended up costing money. And then, in the paramotor industry,
No, those are the best videos on the topic. I've watched them all. I've watched the old broken toe guys. I've watched Pal Takat's new one. He covers some stuff you don't, like helis and misty flips and stuff. But no one covers how to do great big wing overs like Tucker does, as well as the Team Fly Halo videos. They're the good ones.
Here's a great compliment for you, Shane.
Thanks.
Yankee Paramotor says $800. They should be $300. They're very, very good. Very, very well.
80.
Yeah,
I think
80 is nothing. Woody was absolutely
80,
right there.
80, they should be 300. Yeah.
Thanks.
I thought 80 was enough. But
Free would
yeah.
be better, but it's quality material.
Wow.
And I like I said at the beginning of the show, I like having them so I can go back and reflect on them all the time, over and over again. And truly, you will hear Shane saying, come out of it the way you came in of it, or you suck. You hear him in your ear saying these things.
Let me jump in. I know you're trying to end the show, but no.
That's okay.
So
hijacked it a long time ago.
Shane, I tell this story. Tell me if I'm telling the truth.
Mhm.
You had that footage for a while, but you didn't edit it and put it on sale and stuff. You kind of sat on it. It was an unfinished project. And then you had 2 motivations. One, a guy at Endless Foot Drag died doing the nose down spiral. And 2, you saw me trying to kill myself, and you were like, we got to get these done. Are those?
You were the demographic. Yeah, I do remember that now. Yeah, because you were kind of right in your, I want to get into this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, dude, I'll go make these videos. Yeah, but yeah, somebody, that whole round spiral thing, locked in, G out, that's happened, a handful of times since I've been flying. And it always seemed, pretty tragic and completely avoidable if you'd had somebody like Chris Anacroce, taught me from the start, like, don't do that shit. So that was, you know, the main motivation in that, in doing it. And yeah, I feature creeped it, as they call it. I was like tweaking it and trying to get it perfect, and it wasn't. I had to go back out and shoot more. If you see the interview footage, there's like snow on the ground and one. Like,
I didn't
it's
notice.
like it's shot over. Yeah, it's not really snow on the ground, but there's like brown grass, and then the next scene there's green grass. It like took 3 or 4 rounds of going out and talking to get it right. And James, the guy that shot it, was like, dude, just turn it out. It's, you know, it's never going to be perfect. So, and yeah, that's true. That did happen with the endless foot drag, and right around the time that I saw you making a public spectacle of your
I still do that.
no, it's great. I love it. I like loved your energy and everything, and I was like, dude, you'll be great for this. And you're like, can I get a copy free? I'm like, no.
Did I say that? I don't know. I think I only
You-
thought that. I think
you
I'm
didn't
falsely
ask.
accused.
You didn't ask. I'm just kidding.
Shane,
yeah,
JP
so-
wants, so J,
let me-
one
let me
second.
go-
JP
no,
wants
Dave,
to
it's-
go ahead. It's my
I don't
show.
host anymore. So
He's got the big mic.
He gives away a free one. It's the round spiral, and the idea behind it was twofold. One, you get to see what you to expect, right? You know, they're all in the same format. The foot drag one, he calls it energy management, but it's the foot drag one, the wing overs, the asymmetric spot. They're just like the round spiral one. So you know what you're buying. The other half of that is he wanted people to stop doing round spirals, and he has a knack of talking about them that make them seem uncool. Like, this is a round spiral. Only a
Shame,
dumbass.
shame.
Yeah. And
David,
Okay.
David, I'll send you a link to that article and link right now for that. Like, there's a big write-up about round spiral and the danger of them and all that.
Mhm.
If I can make my computer work.
Okay, Dave, your show.
You sure?
Careful.
JP, I wanted to ask you, and JP Tula wanted us to know, you know, would you ever be considering doing DVDs of those for people that don't feel comfortable with a digital copy?
You know, I haven't looked into it since publishing it. It seemed like the demand for the DVD was really low at the time, and it's only gotten lower as time has gone on. It's just really expensive to produce a DVD is the problem with it. So no, I haven't revisited that yet. But I think at some point, once they get irrelevant, I might just do it. And I have no control of the videos. Once they go on Vimeo, they belong to them and they sell them and everything. So, but I think I can at some point pull them off, you know, if people aren't using them at all. But as it stands, people that, you know, bought them 2 years ago are still viewing them that way. But I do totally understand the not wanting to do a digital subscription thing.
Woody, back to you. No, I'm trying to get Shane's link that he just sent me. I'm gonna post that in just a moment here onto the chat so everybody can see that.
Shane, if you couldn't have a Scout, which motor would you get?
Oh, probably a Pluma, I think. That was the last motor I had, and I liked it. Yep, that was a good one. I wasn't worried about it breaking. I really like the Maverick too. It's good. I don't like the gas tank, but yeah.
Because it's
The
small.
size. Mhm.
Yeah.
So that link I won't be able to put on here, but I can add it to the description afterwards. It's too long for you only have 200 characters in the chat, so I can't do that. But I will put it in the description after the show's over. So
You want a tiny URL? We can make that
yeah,
happen
you
real
can send me
quick.
that. That's fine. Send me a tiny URL.
Copy. Oh, 133 characters. Wow. Okay.
Or you can. Do you have the chat up, Shane?
Somewhere. But
Never mind. I just got it. I'm gonna send it
Yeah.
right now. All right, here it comes.
I'm trying to do another thing on Vimeo right now, and I can't figure it out.
Yeah, it came up as 289. Don't worry. We'll get it on.
Shane,
We'll get it on there.
I've had a bunch of people tell me they want you to teach them SATs too. They want to do a SAT video in the same style as the other ones. Have you thought about that?
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
you thought about it. What's your opinion on that idea?
well, we kind of shot one for it, but it wasn't very good. You know, the thing, it's just, if you've never done a spin or stall, I just don't think you should be learning sats on your own, and the timing is really hard, you know, as you know, to get down. It's a lot easier with someone counting over the radio, helping you count or telling you when to pull. And you've already got enough to experiment with intensity and weight shift, and the timing part, you know, it's just, it can be catastrophic. If I had coconut spun that first time that I spun out of it and had never done a stall, I wasn't that high. I don't know what would have happened, you know, because I did like correct it quite, I could see in the video that I corrected it like deliberately, knowing what I was doing. Exiting, it spun, I stalled it, and I kind of, you know, caught it and everything. And who knows what I would have done, you know, if I hadn't already had that experience. So that's why we didn't include sats in there, because they're really easy until you screw them up.
The thing about sets is I feel like the error condition is so much more severe than the other ones. You know, if you take a 20% deflation on a wing over because you don't pull enough outside brake, nothing happens. Like, you know, you're fine. It pops back out. Or if it cravats, you know, you just tug a stabilo or pump the brake. I've had that hundreds of times. The slow and it was always okay. If you do your sat wrong and you nose down spiral and pass out, or you spin it, then, you know, the error condition on that is so much more dangerous than it is on wing overs, and then even less so on asymmetric spirals. So I could see a case for not making, you know, because if the spirit of this is, hey, you got to go out there and try it on your own anyway, let's teach you to do it correctly, that doesn't extend a set. That's where the dividing line exists. Yeah,
without a doubt.
Shane Craig Taylor wants to know why you decided on Scout.
Same question again. Yeah, at the time, it was back in 2013, and we had Team Fly Halo started out trying to design its own paramotor. We made it. It was successful. It was a lot like a round top. And we flew it for about a year, and then we flew a Parajet Zenith and was like, we suck at designing paramotors. So we flew Parajets for a few years, and then we started thinking about designing again. And we had the idea of the dynamic torque compensation. We had talked about it before. And then all of a sudden, this guy from Slovakia had one in 2013, and we're like, hey, give us that. So we flew it and loved it because it didn't have torque offsets. It was very intuitive to fly, and the first one was really delicate, but yeah, it didn't have a lot of torque steer in it, and it was very intuitive to fly, and a really tight package, and we liked that about it, so we started importing them.
Cool. All right, any other questions from our panel or Woody? Now, Woody, it's a pleasure having you on here. I mean,
he doesn't mean that, people.
No, I do. You have great insight, and hey, if I didn't mean it, you wouldn't have been here anyways. So I really appreciate the insight that you bring to the show.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Woody. I insisted. I was like, he better do it.
I'm here for you.
Green M&Ms. I've had guests that say I just want green M&Ms in my room, and
Woody's not afraid to give his opinions about the show, and we appreciate that.
He's very shy too.
He has a mic because of me. You guys should be grateful.
I do have a mic because of you.
That's right. I was there. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. Well, it's about time to start packing up for Florida. For those of us that are going down to Florida for the Palm Bay Florida Fun Fest, I think it's called. Is that right, Rick?
Fun Fest. Yep. Weather looks great. Weather looks beautiful.
Awesome. What's that, Shane?
Oh, did they change the name of it?
Yes.
Fun Fest?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It used to be called Palm Bay Fly-In. Now it's Fun Fest. They've incorporated the fly-in with a one-wheel event. So now there's going to be like 500 people there.
Yeah, you gotta.
Interesting.
If you're a paramotor pilot, you gotta have a one wheel.
Yeah.
Someone on the Paramotor group on Facebook commented that the #1 paramotor injury is falling off the one wheel, and I think that's about right.
This is true. Yeah.
All right. So next week, Saturday night, depending on Dave's internet, he's going to decide to do the show or not. I know the other three of us are going to be busy as well, but we're going to try to tune in from Palm Bay. right? So we'll keep an eye on Facebook, keep an eye on the website, and we'll get that tuned in as well. The week after that is our anniversary show. March 17th last year was our very first show, and to mark or to celebrate it, we're going to start off with the very first person who said welcome to Paramotor Nation. Brandon McLeod's going to be back for that show, and we've got a bunch of shows lined up after that too. So take a look at the website, ourparamotornation.com. You'll see a list of all the upcoming shows. Nicole, Rick, thank you guys as always. Woody, thank you very much for being here as well. I'm going to put the meeting ID into the chat right now. If you'd like to join the after show, you're more than welcome to. And it should be coming in here in just a second, unless my computer busted out again.
I got to check out early, but Woody and Shane, thank you guys for coming on, man. Great to see you.
You bet.
Thanks, man. I'm going to duck out too. My friends are looking to play video games with me.
There you go. Thanks,
Nice.
guys.
Right.
Everybody have a good night. If you're going to the fly-in, be safe.
Yeah.
Bye, all.
Oh, and one more thing, David, I finally got this sorted out. I've been distracted over here, but I put in a promo code for Freestyle 101 for rent or buy 10% off for until the end of April 30th. The code, just type in nation and it'll get you that.
Can I get 10% back for what I already paid? Never.
You gotta ask Vimeo.
Thank you. That's very kind, Shane. Appreciate it. All right, guys, have a good night. Thanks
Bye,
for
everyone.
joining us. See you later.